Real talk, raw feelings. Welcome to a Tuna Grades podcast series, If I'm Being Honest, with your host. My name is Nishani Jayawardena. I'm the founder of Tuna Grade.
And I'm Himgauri, Gigi to my friends, and founder of Tessellations.
So, our topic of discussion today, which we have already been talking about for many different, we've already started the conversation and we forgot to hit record. So, we're back to restarting the conversation about the culture of coexisting, adaptation, civic sense, and my favorite word, immigrant bargain.
Immigrant bargain is a big word. You get a beautiful, stress-free life. That's what you think. But the bargain is that you have to let go of a lot of your culture. You can still follow your culture, but with a twist.
Right.
Be more vigilant and educated about it, and enjoy those things, but with your own space and your own twist to it.
Right. Having had this conversation, I think our podcast has really been more about our personal experiences, how we navigate certain challenges, and how we are absorbing new data as we enter new environments. Technically, our entire podcast is a conversation about culture, because I was re-listening to some episodes. I'm like, that could be culture too. That's a culture too. That's another culture topic. So if anything, it's more obvious to me and Gigi that this topic is an endless ongoing script. And what we're hoping for is to share some of our ongoing personal experiences, our opinions, the way that we experience things that are outside of our control, and how we navigate the things that we're doing. So just as a disclaimer before we start, these are personal opinions. This is not meant to be an instruction manual for anybody. We want all of you, all of our listeners to feel connected, but we also understand that maybe there might be some things that we might share that does not resonate. And if it doesn't, totally cool. We would love to hear about it. At the end of the day, this is why we're saying, if I'm being honest, is the purpose of our podcast. We want to put that honest opinion out there. And that may not be a digestible truth for everybody, which is okay. And if there's something you'd like to add, something you'd like to inform us about that we may have missed, we want to hear from you, whether that's a comment or a direct message, like however you guys would like to reach us, please do. But I want to get back to what Gigi was kind of starting, and that was the sacrifices an immigrant may be making when they decide to start a new life. And the best of both worlds, right? Like, I think when I first thought about moving out of Sri Lanka, I didn't recognize some of the things that I would actually have to let go of and what I would miss. I didn't know that that was going to happen because I was so excited about having it all in this new world. And I was thinking ahead. I was not at all recognizing the environment that I belong to. And I believe a lot of immigrants may be positioning themselves to move and starting a new life because they're running away from their home. It's not safe for them. Maybe it's just because they just think that there's better opportunities elsewhere. Maybe it's so that they get away from their family. Guilty. Well, not all family members, but so yeah, I wanted to get involved in the conversation of having it all and what it means and what it's been like for you to have to sacrifice something to start something new.
Like when you move to US, and when we are in our early 20s, right? Like we do not want to take our culture forward. We're just in the moment, like, oh, this is what I get to do, and that's where I'm going to be at. So we are in that
Right.
space. So for me, so far, like from India, I have been in UAE and then I moved to US. Like both of my transitions have been kind of me moving first with my family, which is my parents. I moved to live with my parents for some time. And then my second transition was to live with my partner, to move in with my husband. So
Yeah.
my moves were a little bit different, I'm going to say. Like I, along the journey, right? Like when it came to my culture also, India and UAE are comparatively closer, right? Like if there's like a lot of Indian community in UAE.
Right.
So there were things that we celebrated. So you are away from home, but you are still home, right? Like
Right.
because a lot of people followed that culture with you.
Yeah.
And understand the scale. UAE is very small, right? Like now you are in a bigger country here, like a bigger space. You're
Right.
dealing with a lot of other nationalities, and you're not in your, your small
In
pool
the
of
bubble.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you really want to be in that small space and not grow out of your bubble, you're free to do so. But I don't think I was that person even when I moved to UAE. But I had a lot of other friends. When I was learning each one's culture, like understanding how they were, you understand that it's not only you who is standing forward, right? Like
Mm.
you have to make space for everybody else's culture, right? Today, as we discussed, our Sri Lankan New Year, and I'm going to say the Hindu New Year also pretty much happens around the same time, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But how do we hold space for both the cultures, right? Like, is
Mm.
it celebrated the same way? No, it's not.
Yeah.
But having that respect, being there for the other person, I think that matters a lot.
Right. And and to your point, like when you were in Dubai, it almost sounds like you didn't have to completely separate from your like childhood culture, right? Because growing up in a small town in India, like you probably got exposed to so many unique things that maybe you couldn't carry all of them with you to Dubai because Dubai is such a advanced. I feel like Dubai, I think of modern world, like everything is different, like some of the things that you've described and the luxuries and the services that's available in Dubai. I'm like, whoa, like it's a different world. But
Yes.
somehow there's so many brown people that have migrated to Dubai, right? Because the foundation of Dubai, I believe, is built on the backs of many brown people from various parts of the world, of course. Yeah. But definitely on the Southeast Asian, there's so many Sri Lankans. I even have family members who have different types of jobs in Dubai and have that they have their closed community. So just like there is an Indian community, I have heard there's a Sri Lankan community in Dubai. I just,
Yes.
I've never been exposed to it, but it makes me feel like everybody kind of gathered and said, okay, we're just going to keep gathering and then we're going to have this nice, safe bubble, even though we're somewhere new. And we want
Mm-hmm.
to keep that bubble. Some of it can go overboard where people get like really focused on keeping the bubble that they forget that they're actually in a new place and a new country and that it's okay for them to blend and enmesh themselves a little bit. And that's, I think, why we're having this conversation because,
Yes.
like, coexisting is such a unique experience to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I have met immigrants who refuse to coexist in a
Yes.
new land that they decided to move to, and they've kind of held themselves to the same things that they used to believe in, the same traditions, the same values, and they refuse to let those things go. And that's like it's like you're trading off something. You want something new, but you're kind of losing touch with everything that you were standing for and what you might have been looking for when you decided to move, right?
Yes. I'm just going to add like when you are immigrating or when you decide to move to another country, it's not like they have invited you or they have called you. You willingly have decided to immigrate or take that leap, right? Like you
That's
think
true.
that that's the best decision for you. Please go ahead and do that. But like when you're
Mm.
trying to do that, be a little bit mindful about where you're moving.
Yeah.
So I would kind of put it in such a way that imagine two roommates moved in together, right? Like one person doesn't have the right and the other person, like you make that space a coexisting space for both the people. You
Yeah.
embrace each other's culture equally. Like there is nobody who is superior or there's nobody who is, somebody who needs to follow in a particular way, right? Like when you are into that space, like that's what I really want a lot of people to understand, that first thing, you cannot push your culture on everybody because that's what you want
Mm.
and you're not ready to accept somebody else's culture. That's a big no no, right? Like if you want somebody else to be respectful about something about you, first you have to go ahead and be respectful about them. You cannot
Mm.
expect like, okay, you just service me and then I'll decide based on your service if I want to service you. I just feel like we need to change our culture first. So this is some for me, right? Like I moved in at the age of 33, 34. Pretty much lived on the other side of the world where, oh, you said Diwali, everybody understood it. And when I moved here, I took a
Right.
pause from everything that I knew. And I'm like, first I need to learn what my culture means here.
Mm.
Am I going to bring in what I have learned, but I still want to be respectful, like, be mindful about people around me, right? Like now, our small group that we have, you're from Sri Lanka. Niles is an American, but he has Egyptian roots. My
That's right.
husband is American, but Indian.
Right.
So, like, we have like a lot of mixed culture flowing anyway. Like, we have our other friend who is 100% American. He's born, raised, like, his family has been here. We have other friends as well.
Yeah.
So, how do we kind of respect them, their space, and still be open to like learning from them and telling them from where we also come from, right? So, like the small example was when I made the traditional Maharashtrian sweetam, which was the sweet dumpling, which we call modaks. It's only because I love that dessert, right? Like I wanted to share that joy with you all. That's this way of like, integrating your culture with somebody else's. Give them the space to learn. You
Yeah.
cannot expect everybody to know off their back. Do I know everything about American culture? No, I don't, but I'm willing to learn. What do you think about it?
No, I love that you brought that example of that treat because it was delicious and you make a fantastic modak. If your mom is listening, I really want her to know like all of us were we couldn't stop eating it. And I told you while I was eating it, this reminds me of something from Sri
Yeah.
Lanka. And I figured out that it's called pani pol, and I had shared that video with you so I can share. Now I'm definitely not comfortable making it myself, but then you were like, you know what? I can make this for you. Let's make this together, right? Like you do some part of it, and then we'll make it. We'll see what comes up out of it. Wherever I moved, I never felt like I had a lot of the Sri Lankan community to kind of connect with, which in hindsight, I kind of like that that happened that way because it kind of forced me to learn how to coexist with individuals who weren't familiar with our holidays, right? Like you said, New Year's for us is in April. I genuinely am so not comfortable with New Year's in January because I'm like, why? Especially in Michigan. I'm like, whoa, it's so depressing. It's so dark and gloomy and sometimes really cold. Like, how are we starting something new, right? And April, which in my mind makes perfect sense because spring is the start. Like, nature is letting us know, hey, I'm ready to
Mhm.
reawaken with me, lay down the foundation so that you can reap the harvest in the summer and in the fall, and then it resets, right? So I definitely agree with you. I was also realizing when you were talking about our friend group, because we are blending with some friends who have really not ever been to our part of the world. They've never visited. Their only exposure to Sri Lanka and India is through us. And even Niles, like Niles has not, I'm pretty sure he has not ever visited Egypt, even though his dad's from Egypt and his dad grew up in Egypt. And sometimes even Niles notices that like kind of internal conflict because he has roots that tie him to that culture, but he's also not from the culture. Kind of similar, I think, to your husband too, Nitesh, right? Because like he has some exposure in India, but it's not enough for it to be like he knows exactly what it means to be born and raised and go through the waves of change while
Yeah.
growing up in India.
Growing up in any country, I feel like it's after 20s. Like when you set out to do things by yourself and you constantly don't have somebody monitoring your every move, that's when you experience a country.
That is such a good point. That's what I had told my cousins because I had one cousin who was begging. She was like, Nishani Aki, can you help me get to the US, right? Like, can you do anything? Can you sponsor me? And I'm like, I technically cannot sponsor you. At least at that time, I was not in a position to
No.
do that because I was still on a different visa status and I couldn't just have anybody else, right? But I remember telling her, I'm like, listen, everything that you have, think about it. From the moment you wake up, your morning tea, your mom makes it for you. Your clothes, your mom has washed them for you, right? And like the dishes, if you forget about it, guess what? Someone's taken care of it in the household, right? If you travel somewhere and you get stuck, you just call your family, call someone nearby. You might actually have a friend or a family member who might recognize you on the road because that happens way too often in a small town. And all of a sudden, you have all of the support. Like when I go back home, there are times when I have to act like I'm rushing to go
Yeah.
somewhere because if not, people just catch me and they'll remember and they'll ask questions. And so that type of experience has not really happened to me here. Right. And so I was telling my cousin, I'm like, just remember that you're letting all of that go and you're saying, I'm okay to doing everything by myself, at least
Yeah.
for a while. I'm not going to say it's forever, but for a while. And the only reason I think I didn't immediately leave the US after my undergrad was also because I connected with a lot of other international students in college who were also just as confused as I was. And then we were all trying to fit into this realm of, okay, you're bringing this part of your culture. How does that fit here? Can we find
Exactly.
space for all of us and make room for all of our holidays? And we sometimes
Yeah.
actually did celebrate a lot of our different holidays. The Chinese New Year, I had a friend from Nepal, I had a friend from Nigeria. Like, we would celebrate different things mostly through food because we didn't really have the money to have all of like the fancy festival feature.
I feel like food is the biggest entry, right? Like, how do you decide to like first start understanding somebody else's culture? Get
Food.
through food.
Yeah,
Get
I agree.
through, start with food. You're always going to find flavors that are going to like, trigger some part of you, which is just going to be like warmth. Like
Yes.
it's that immediate hug that you get. Be open, right? Like if there is somebody else walking in with something like, okay, allergies, yes, that's fine, but like just
Yeah,
be a little bit open to first understanding where they come from, what that
right.
food means for them,
Yeah,
because that also brings in a lot of respect, right? Like if somebody comes in front of you and they say something, rather than putting them down, be like, hey, listen, like, probably I'm not comfortable trying, but I would love to give it a try, because that's what happens with most of our cuisine. I'm going to say people would turn it down because they think it's going to be super spicy.
you actually have changed it so that it's not, because I remember you had invited us over for one of our first meals together, and one of our friends, she powered through it, but I could tell that she was like struggling and she was starting to like sweat, and then you were like, oh my god, I didn't realize, and it was like a whole to do. But like, our friend was so thoughtful because she wasn't even going to say something about it. She knew she had to be ready to receive whatever it is that you were presenting, because she couldn't have just predicted what you were going to make, because she was also open to the new experience. I
Exactly.
think, as like, especially seeing our friends be so open to opening up their homes and their minds to us, I
Yeah.
believe that as immigrants, that's something that we all are forced to experience. Like, I think, like, technically a person here could choose not to be friends with anybody from another culture or a different country, and just be like, you know what, I'm going to stick with the people that look like me, sound like me, that are from my hometown or my state or my country, and I'll leave it at that. Which at this point, everybody's almost mixed. But let's just say some people have the right to choose, like, I don't want that. I don't want to go out of my bubble. I want to stay within my bubble. As immigrants, as brown people, like, I know brown people who do the same thing. So this is not to say it's just one culture or another, right? Or one race or another. But this idea of just coming together and being open, as immigrants, we already need to have that, I guess, that, how would I say it? The openness to exploring things that are outside of our comfort zone. Like, I didn't
Yes.
really have a choice because everything was out of my comfort zone in the beginning. Now it's very rare that I'll really encounter all new, uncomfortable. Like, I have to be patient with myself and to adjust. And that's why I think a lot of the times I'm deferring to you with those questions, like, how do you experience this? Because
Yeah.
at this point, I'm like, nothing could really shock me in the US, but there are some cultural shocks that I still experience, or things that I just
Right.
never got to experience. Like, apparently a ton of movies, right? Like, all of our friends would be like, oh my God, you've never seen this? Okay, we're going to do a movie night and we have to educate you on this, because if not, you won't understand the reference when we're talking
Mhm.
in social settings. And
Yeah.
our friends will make these comments or they'll crack a joke. And like, I know most of this, my whole life has just gone over my head because I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then eventually I started being more comfortable in saying, like, I have no idea what you're talking
Yeah.
about. And then people will be like, okay, it's a movie reference. It's this movie. Let's watch it. Or you need to watch it as homework and come and tell me what you think. Like, and I've had those things happen. And I really appreciated people who didn't get offended because I just didn't know. And they were like, you know what? I can teach you. I can show you this.
Okay. So first things, like why would they do that and why would they not get offended is because the way you showed up in front of them. You didn't show up in the space of like, hey, I'm here, and that's how you deal with me. Like I don't know is I'm never going to learn about you. If you put that attitude, nobody's going to accept you, right? Like
Mhm.
the way you show up is the way people accept you.
Right, right. That's a good point.
Yeah, as you said, right? Like it's easier for somebody from here to be like, hey, listen, I'm not going to be friends with you. You are coming from somebody, some other country. You stick to your people, we stick to our people.
Right.
And first things, like, when any one of us immigrate to any other country, don't find your people first. Find people who have made that transition with you, who are not from your country. Like the
Mm,
first thing is, if you have decided to leave your comfort, leave it. Explore the things that you don't know, right? Like it's easier for me right now to tell you things in Hindi, like straight up give you those Bollywood references, but no, you have to learn how I can give you the same reference but in a global context as well. And for that, you have to first come down from your high horse, right? Like you have to come down to the same level and start learning. When I moved to Dubai, like somehow I had two connections. Like where I lived was 100% Indian community.
yeah.
My family is there, so there was a constant of like speaking the same mother tongue, being in like talking in Hindi, having those Hollywood references. That was one of my life. And then when I was working, there was a lot of global culture there, right? That's where I learned that it's not just easy to give you some context in Hindi and like you move on, right? Like if you have
Yeah.
to communicate with other people, you have to expand your vision also. You cannot be like, oh, I know so much. I'm only
And
going to
that's it.
come so much and I don't care where you come from. Like when that attitude comes into play, I think that's a
Mm,
main thing why people, or right now whatever is happening, I think it's the part of care. You
hmm.
care for somebody else's feelings, their thought, their culture. The other person is going to respect and they're going to like turn around and show that to you.
You make such a keen observation, and I mentioned this before we started recording, so I'm going to re-mention this. Your perspective is very telling, very community based, because
Yeah.
you're saying when I enter another person's house, I'm going to be respectful of that person and respect their wishes before I enforce my own desires and expectations, right? And I know from some things that I've observed in Sri Lanka, sometimes foreigners will go to Sri Lanka, and now foreigners have a lot more control in Sri Lanka than Sri Lankans do. And that's actually a huge source of frustration to some people. I think some people are not really bothered because they're like, it's okay, I don't really care either way. But I'm bothered by that because I think there are people who exist in this world who have the opposite mindset of what
Yes.
you're describing, who
Uh-huh.
believe that when I walk in somewhere new, I'm the guest, I'm the special one. Everybody needs to cater to me and not me having to have humility and to respect the other person, right? So that's such an specific value that I think comes from potentially our bringing. And the more I get to know you, the more I'm like, wow, we have been instilled with similar values that we continue to uphold. And I really like that value. I like when you walk into someone else's space that you do not just barge in and just say, whatever I say goes, and everybody needs to adjust to me. And it's more of, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait to see what this person has and what they're presenting, and I'm going to approach it that way. And the reason why I got so excited when you were talking about it is because I'm reading a book by James McKinley called The Modern Seller's Playbook. And it's really about sales. But in that, he talks about how it's so important for you to first prioritize the needs of the other person before you think about yours, right? Especially from a sales lens, he's communicating that. But it applies to culture, right? It applies to how you approach somebody else outside of your culture and just being open minded to learning from them rather than inserting all of your stuff onto them. And with that, I want to come back to what you were talking about with Diwali because I want to get to the topic of cultural celebrations because I know how you felt earlier when we were talking about it, and I just want to come back to because you shared me those reels of Dubai, the streets of Dubai lit up for Diwali, and I was like shook. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like, I wouldn't even know it's Dubai if you hadn't told me. I would think it's just a street in India,
Yeah.
because it looks so different. It looks so colorful and dynamic, and everybody was connected and interested in participating in the celebration. So I guess I'm curious how you have brought your cultural celebrations, religious celebrations, and what you experience now?
I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me, or some of them might agree with me.
Right.
But my thoughts are, I decided to leave the country. I decided to move on. What I take from the culture is my space, right? Like how I want to celebrate something needs to be between my space and the community that is first around me. That doesn't mean that the entire world needs to know that they have to stop everything because I'm celebrating something.
Yeah.
That sort of a privilege, right? And it happened to me gradually is because I moved to an Islamic country first. I learned a little bit from them is they were always very mindful when all the immigrants were trying to celebrate, like, all the expats were trying to celebrate their festivals. They let us be, right? And that's where the entire fact of it being like, if a lot of people who have traveled would know Dubai has this entire small mini India, I would call it. It's called Bardubai or Karama area. You have a lot of Indians there, right? Like your neighbor is an Indian, you are an Indian. Every other person around you is somehow like from either India, Pakistan, or Sri Lanka. Like that's a very brown community driven area. Okay.
Okay.
Now, in that, we know how to celebrate, we know how to respect, and it's easier for us to put up lights and put up all the celebrations. I get it. But now, with that, how much are you going to follow? Like, are you going to burst crackers through the night because somebody is letting you do so? Are you going to self do the analysis and be like, I have gotten to enjoy so much? I'm going to pause. I'm going to like look at people around me and be mindful of their situation and calm down. I have gotten what I wanted. I got my joy and move on. Right? Like that's what I think it's about respect. Like here also, yes, you go ahead, you do your celebrations in your house, or you do it in a small space and your community. Why are we taking that celebration and affecting a lot of other people? Is where I come. Yes, you're allowed to showcase, but how much of it? Showcase
Mm.
people who are wanting to learn, right? Like everybody has their own problems, everybody is dealing with their own things. And again, you have decided to make the move. They didn't decide to come to your country.
Yeah.
So when I have done that move, I still need to learn how first I need to integrate other people into my space in order to learn my new way of celebration. I
Sure.
just first take a pause, take a beat for yourself, see where you're at, and then learn how you
Yeah.
can integrate all that process.
But to your point, sometimes there is such a limit as going overboard because not everybody may understand what it is that you are celebrating. And Diwali is getting a little bit more mainstream, at least in the US. More and more people are starting to recognize the holiday as for what it is, or at least they know that it's a festival of lights, like they know
Yeah.
something about it.
Yeah.
But I have still met people, plenty of people who have no idea what we're talking about. They might know some of it, but they just don't really care. And that's kind of why I love America, because it does hold space depending on the state. You have more space to like practice your own culture, the celebrations. Like, I know for a fact that I actually dropped a lot of Sri Lanka's cultural celebrations, religious practices when I moved because it was just me. I was like, this is just not something I'm going to do by myself. If I had maybe a group, maybe I wonder if I would have tried it differently, but I really just adapted and assimilated more towards the Western world, and whatever they were celebrating, I just started celebrating. Some of these celebrations are fantastic. They kind of have the same goal, which is to bring community, to give thanks, like to be together, quality time. So I'm like, okay, it's the same, but it's just not the same, right?
Yes.
There's no temple that I'm going to in the US where it feels like a temple in Lanka. I have not experienced that,
Yeah.
but I've also not gone hunting for all of these temples. So in a way, someone could be like, well, Nishani, that's because you just haven't stepped into your culture bubble within the American world that you've belonged to. And that kind of also brings me to like what people do when they travel to a new country, because you really wanted to focus on the civic sense, right? Like civic
Yes.
responsibility. How do you take care of the environment around you? And I know this is a conversation where I'm going to let Gigi lead it because I know that she's had a lot of thoughts on it, and it's about the frustration that she's experienced observing the lack of civic sense. So I'm going to just kind of tune into you and see what you got
Yeah,
to
I
say.
don't know if I'm going to put the video on for this time, but like as soon as she mentioned it, if somebody saw my eyes roll back into my skull and then come back, right? Please. That's how irritated I am because again, like I give you the entire example of if someone comes and dirties your house, how
Mm,
would you feel? Like, do you live in filth every single day? No, right?
Right.
Like, learn to take care of things around you just like your own house. That's what I would start with. Like, do you just throw trash in your house? Like, if you're living like that, I'm sorry. Like, you just need to figure out a way to kind of, reflect on who you are as person and like, take care of all of these things. There are people who live in slums and everything, but you should go to their houses are actually clean, right? It's all around the surroundings. Like, do you think that they are actively going and trashing that? I don't think so. It's about everybody else that's coming and dumping things around. You just think, oh, it's not my responsibility, it's not my house, I'm just going to put that one piece of paper into like 1,000 people in a day. See what you have done to your surrounding. Again, this I'm speaking in a lot of context to India, but again, those Indians, you bring 50% of them out in somewhere else and they are willing to follow all the rules here, and I'm like, what happens to you guys when you go back home? Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
And then the 50% is just like, wherever I go, I just decide to trash. Like, I'll just roll my window down and there are so many things. I don't know if people have given it a context. Like, do you know if somebody's going and actively cleaning that? The answer is no, right?
Yeah.
Like, if
Yeah.
you throw it on a freeway, nobody's actually going and cleaning it. You are damaging your own environment. Like, do you think a lot of, and we use a lot of plastic.
Yeah.
Do you think the plastic is like, gradable? Like, it's not like, like if you throw, for example, a banana peel, I would still give it, right? Like, it will degrade by itself, it will mix with the soil. Like, again, there will be a process, but not for a plastic, right? Like, at least throw it in a place where you know that somebody is taking care of it later.
Yeah.
These are very small things, right? Like, when it comes to civic sense, like, like, let's start with basics. And just, I don't know how to say this, but like, when you have kids, you think that your kids should carry your name. It's the same with the community, right? Like, one person does it and the entire community gets blamed. Like, nobody is going to look at the 5-10% of people who actually want to do right. Majority of the people are not willing to follow you, right? Like, the majority of the people are willing to go against it.
Right.
Reflect. Like, I just want people to kind of take a beat, see where you stand. And again, I'm not saying that, oh, we are here and we want to preach something, but these are really small things in your day to day that you can take care of.
Mm.
And yes, today everybody talks about, say, racism, or somebody talks about immigrations and everything. Why do you
Yeah.
think that suddenly it's on the rise? It's
Mm.
because it's almost like you are coming into somebody else's house and you're being the bigger bully.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in a right world, why do you have to be a bully? Like, why can't you have an entire, like, a place wherein you all can coexist? Have you ever gone out and looked at people around you and be like, hey, how can I celebrate your festival? We don't go ahead and do that, right? I'm 100% like, when I say all of these things, I am going to ask, my stakes are majority in India, right? Like, I am going to speak more through that lens. But
Sure.
we don't. We want everybody to enjoy our festivals. Yes, we do have fun festivals and everything, but no. Have you actively gone and participated in somebody else's culture? Like, taken interest in what they think and why would they celebrate a particular way? If
Mm.
you have, amazing. But if you have not, just take a beat. Look at your neighbors, look at your friends, and ask them, like, how can we be there for you?
Hmm. I mean, your point about loitering, right? Like, I think your frustration about loitering comes from what you have observed while in India, while observing your people, your countrymen, not really think about the importance of taking care of their environment. And I think even Sri Lanka struggles with that in certain environments. It's not everywhere, but it is still a bigger issue. Like, I'll see more people, like you said, throwing something out of their window or just dropping whatever they were doing right there and then walking away and acting like that's okay. And maybe that's not really a triggering topic for me. Like, I'll see it, I would maybe make a comment, or if I see it, I'll pick it up and I'll just throw it away or put it somewhere where trash is collected, right? And we're not saying, like, even a banana peel. Sometimes you leave a banana peel, it's going to start composting and degrading. And then now you don't want to smell that because that brings in all kinds of like insects and bugs to help the actual process. And that can also be a torturous process for somebody else. This is the same thing of like people who have dogs, who walk their dogs and don't pick up after the dog when they poop. And then all of a sudden it's somebody else's problem, which
Yes.
that person didn't sign up for. And that's like, those are like little ways that I think of civic sense and civic responsibility, like treat the environment as if you would treat your home. But to
Mm-hmm.
your point, and I want to add, like, there are some people who may not even have that value about what it means to treat your home with respect and take care of your home and being a good host, being a responsible host. Like, there are people who struggle with that. They just don't know what to do and they have no respect, or they don't know how to open that door. And that can also create barriers, because I think
Yes.
you may have a different expectation about what cleanliness is. And I think you and I have realized, like, living with our significant others, that like our definition of clean and their definition of clean are in two different wavelengths. And we have to learn to figure
Yes.
out a way to find that middle ground. But like, to your point, your opinion is respect the host country and the environment that you're walking into, because you're not the ruler of this land, right? You
Mhm.
are a guest, and a guest is treated with respect. Like, I would treat a guest who comes to my home with the utmost respect. They get the best food options. Like, they get the first dibs, they get the second dibs, they get the last call. Like, I do things like that. Like, I like to
Yep.
treat my guest as if they are really special. But that's not really always going to happen like that. Not every host that you encounter as an immigrant or a person entering a new place is going
Yeah.
to treat you that way.
I'm going to add one more thing to all of these things is language, right? Like I'm going to say your mother tongue, the
Yeah.
way you communicate, right? I would just say this because again, like I was in another country where Arabic was a dominant language, and I know what it is to feel a little bit like overwhelmed at that particular point is because everybody else is speaking Arabic in a room where you know that amount of information is needed for you to finish your job.
Right.
So you are waiting for somebody else to actually sit and translate it for you, right?
Mm,
Like, and it's a very, very personal experience that I've been through.
sure.
And honestly, like having said that, like I come from a country where we don't have one language, we have multiple languages, right? So we have always been in a space of like adapting and understanding and communicating in a way where everybody in the room understands.
Sure. Okay.
But it's unfortunate that a lot of people they come out and they realize that that's only the way that they are going to communicate, and they're not going to spread out. They're not going to let other people understand them or something. And I really feel that's wrong, right? Like me and my husband in our friends group, we both speak the same mother tongue, or we understand a lot of like the languages that we speak in India. But I don't know if you have observed, like if there is a conversation between the both of us, also, we'll always make sure that it's in a language that everybody else understands. And we have made it an active choice to communicate in English, even if you're out of the house. Like I would say it's only when both of us are at home, we end up speaking in our mother tongue.
Really.
Like if we are out in a public space, 90% of the time we would speak, 99, I'm going to say we'd speak in English. It's just so that I don't want somebody else to feel as if, they are not safe. And it's
Mm,
bound to happen, right? Like you do not understand anything. I'm probably making fun of nothing, but you will suddenly feel it like an attack because the words also have different meanings in different
yeah.
languages.
Yeah. That's
It
true.
could be the same word, but it could be taken in different contexts, right? And there
Mm,
could be like the ways of kind of moving that. So if you have decided to immigrate, if you have decided to move, at least when you're in a setting where people can hear you, okay, in if especially supermarkets, please try and communicate, in English. Is just so that you're making people around you feel safe.
mm,
Imagine if somebody else came with the third language and they spoke for 2 seconds, even you're going to be like, oh my God, am I okay? And if you're feeling that, you need to make sure that the other person doesn't feel like that. So these are like these small things where people forget. Yes, I'm not saying that, oh, you don't embrace your culture, you don't speak your, yes, you do, but know where you are at. You
mm.
have decided to migrate. Always remember you uprooted yourself from your country. They did not come and beg you to do so. And when you have bought yourself on a global scale for whatever reason that you did, like your growth or wherever, everybody's circumstances are different. But learn to be respectful about somebody else also. Like they make them also feel safe around you. And again, like, no, we all don't come with that agenda of like harming somebody, but
Yeah.
it could be taken in that way. So before it starts, be gentle. Creating those boundaries around people, maybe with your language, maybe with your body language, or with the way you're kind of showing up, it blocks people. Don't do that. Like, be as open, like what we want at the end of the day, right? Like, we want everybody to feel included. What are we all fighting for? So, having said all of those things, what are your takes on this? Like, well, how do you feel?
Yeah, I honestly, I think I can definitely resonate with what you're saying. But as you were saying it, in my mind, I just kept going to these flashback moments from just social media, from me having seen people treat immigrants with like saying like, learn our language, learn English, speak in a way that we can understand, and the kind of bashing people who cannot speak the language just because they're not learning it fast enough.
Mhm.
I know that when I was in undergrad, and mind you, it took me some time to master my ability to speak English confidently. It's taken me a while, and I'm obviously getting better. Every year that I live here, I'm getting closer to becoming more and more confident speaking in English. But
Also going to add on a little bit here and say, I feel the same. And I know a lot of people, I do speak really fast and I do speak a little bit different, but I'm also learning. I'm on my journey.
yeah, exactly. And you're such an open-minded person. You have such a extroverted opinion about like everybody needs to feel safe. I want everybody around me to kind of feel like I'm not hiding something from them. And I think that's really, really commendable. And I think it speaks to your character. I know that not everybody will agree with what you're saying. And I'm not even sure if I'm disagreeing with you. I see your perspective. I see where you're coming from, and you're saying like, hey, it makes sense. You are not in your home country where the language is the main language. So it's okay for you to speak it there. But like when you come somewhere new, maybe if you find yourself kind of getting captured into that like bubble, right? Like you're not really comfortable moving outside of your comfort zone and your language, so you try to focus on people who speak the same language. Like when I was in undergrad, I would travel with some of my friends, and there was another Sri Lankan student in our group, and that him and I would actually speak in Sinhalese in public settings. And we felt really empowered doing that because nobody could understand what we were saying. Right. And that was kind of our way of getting through certain situations when if he felt uncomfortable, if I felt uncomfortable, I would say something in Sinhalese, and then him and I would reassure each other of something, and that would be it. And I also had a lot of Indian friends, and I started learning Hindi. I could catch on. Like even
Yeah.
now, like I mostly understand, but it takes me a minute to like really follow. But this is because I believe I have shared your perspective of wanting to learn, right? I have been interested in learning Hindi, and also, I mean, Bollywood movies. Like we were just talking about Main Huna with the sign, and like all of those things brought back. Like I'm like, I just need to watch Bollywood and I will learn Hindi, right? Just like K-pop, like you watch Korean drama and then you learn some words and you learn that language and you learn the culture. And there's things that you can do to absorb and learn new things. But I also know that being in America means that I have this freedom to still express my own culture, express my language. But to your point, it can make some people feel like they're outcasts from that. Like if they don't speak it, it can make someone feel uncomfortable. I was at an event with you where we were surrounded by a lot of women from different parts of India, from different parts of Southeast Asia, and they spoke a language. They all spoke that language so fluently. I was like the only one in the room who did not understand what was going on. And there were multiple moments where I really appreciated when you like sidebarred and was like, hey, this is what they're talking about now. Some of it I followed, and you would say it and I would be like, okay, confirmation, I understand what they're saying now. But so that one, because of this conversation, I wanted to bring attention to like the idea of insulated community.
Mhm.
Like when I had a therapy client who was from Iran, and she had moved to the US, and she's married and have established a full life here. And she was telling me about how she would meet other Iranian mothers, other Iranian women in the US, and how they would judge her because she has chosen to let go of some of her traditional values and things that she didn't have from Iran. And she was so frustrated, and she was telling me, like, Nishani, I was wondering, like, why would you move then? Why did you leave your traditional value system and your upbringing to come here to bring the same thing? The whole point of, at least for her, she was like, the whole point of me moving was so that I could reestablish something new, that I could upgrade the way that I perceived my reality, right? And I'm not sure if you knew, but on Staten Island, there is a small community of Sri Lankans. And I can't remember the exact town now, but like it seemed like everybody who's Lankan has kind of moved to certain pockets, like insulated little bubbles, right? And Staten Island is one of them. And some of those streets, when you go through it, it's like the signs are Sri Lankan grocer. There's some words in Sinhalese, like there's signs in Sinhalese, just like when you go to Dearborn and you have actual Arabic signs on the road. Like it is like a different world that you've entered. And part of me is like, is the reason why everybody gathered like that or tried to make it bigger and make it a community because they're afraid of this new experience in the Western world, and they're trying to keep a little bit of that
Yeah.
whatever they brought in with me? But then sometimes that goes to an extreme where they close themselves off to everybody else. And then all of a sudden, especially like some people that I have met, they have lived in the US for 30, 40 years, and they still somehow act like they are living inside the bubble of their culture, of the people that they know, and they have never expanded beyond that. And that bothered me because I'm like, I could just get that in Lanka, right? I could just go back to Colombo and like and experience that. And I have my own frustrations with what Sri Lankans have done because Sinhala is not the only language there. Tamil is also a major language in Lanka, but like over the years, at least while I was in school, they removed Tamil as a language to be learned. They didn't prioritize it. And then that created this like this battle, that there was a war in Sri Lanka for many years that I lived through, that was all about the fact that they didn't speak the language. And the Sinhalese folks would be like, well, you're supposed to learn this language. And then people from the northern part of Sri Lanka were like, yeah, but this is also one of the main languages. Like, why are we being forced to learn this one language? So I think English, to come back full circle, sometimes I wonder if like that the colonization, because English is such a well-known widespread language that sometimes I think it has watered down other languages because more and more people are leaning on English because it is universal. And I get that. And to your point, like if you're in an English nation, it makes sense that you would speak that language, right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's
But
like, where do you draw that line?
exactly. I completely understand. But like again, as we said, there are communities. Communities exist for a reason. So you get to experience all of those parts of you
Mm,
as well.
yeah.
But you need to understand why you moved, what your circumstances were, and if that the move meant a lot to you, why would
Mm,
you pick? Like, if you have to come to a country where a particular language is spoken, right? Like, at least
yeah.
people who move to US, UK, their main dominant language is English, so it's easier on you. But what if you move to, say, Berlin, German?
Right.
You understand German, you don't, but like you have to for your immigration process, you need to learn German. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you are put in those situations, you are willing to
Hmm.
do that. Why wouldn't you take that one step ahead? It's just forming communities. And as you said, there is that fact of like keeping yourself safe in a space, because times were different, people didn't know any better. But
Right.
today we live in a different world, right? Like, learn to adapt. Like, you have so many good things around you, use it to your right advantage, right? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
don't take social media in a way and trash things. Like, it gives you a space to learn and understand each other's culture. My entire thing is to not come with a blocked mind, right? Like, oh, I only know this and I'm only going to operate from this. In all of this bargain, I feel you as an individual, you lose out on a lot of experiences.
Hmm.
Sure, you will get everything that your community wants you to do, right? But have you experienced that there are other people around it also? And then people take it personally that, oh my God, everybody's calling me a racist. People are calling me. Yes, obviously, like, it's like if you're walking in that clan and you're not willing to look at other people, it is going to be an issue at one point, right? Like, you have to still exist in a bigger world, in a bigger space. You still have to interact with other people. So, are you getting everybody ready to do so? Like, if I go out, I know that I can have a conversation with somebody. Yes, probably English is not their first language, but like if they're talking in few broken words, you can still make them feel heard.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
get it that they shouldn't have traveled, but they did. What if they have the willingness to learn? So you need to have that space for them to learn. I feel today's day and age, we are lacking that part. We
Huh.
lack
Yeah.
the entire thing of like giving somebody the space to learn, giving somebody the space to grow. And again, like with all of these things, we are not saying that leave your culture behind, keep it
Right.
super close to you. Like that is what is going to set you apart, but don't put it in such a way that it restricts you.
Yeah. The idea of cultural baggage, right? Like,
Yeah.
do not
Yes.
carry the baggage and expect others to make space for you. Be open to the idea of making space for them, and also opening yourself up to the idea that others might make space for you, because you and I have experienced people who have never been to our countries make space for us, not
Yes.
judge us, not make fun of us, and actually recognize that, like, it's okay. You guys are still learning. Here's how we can add to you, right? And I believe that we can all have that open mind, and coexisting is about peace and safety and everybody having space to exist rather than some claiming that they're better than the rest. And that's really our mission here. We're sharing our personal feedback. And I think, Gigi, like, you're coming in with such a impressionable opinion about, like, be open to learning the language when you're in somebody else's house. Like, it's their house. You walked in. You brought yourself into that space. And I know that there are going to be brown people that may listen to this and may not agree with that and may actually feel angry towards us in even sharing this thought. I think we're just trying to find a way to navigate this new world. And
Yes.
this is how I've learned to navigate. I've definitely assimilated more towards the Western culture. I preferred to move away from some of the Sri Lankan cultural values that I was raised to believe, because it wasn't serving me. My
Yeah.
life has, I feel so much more freer now in this environment that I've created. But I do miss some of the things that I let go of, like the things that I can never take back, and I can never go back to that anymore, because I'm not the same person now. And it's
Right.
hard for me now when I go back. And sometimes I'll go to Sri Lanka and people in Sri Lanka will make fun of me and say, like, oh, you sound so modern and you don't even sound like you're Sri Lankan anymore. And part of me has that tug of war of, like, internally, like, do I really let go of my roots like that? Am I really sounding that different now? And then the other part of me is like, yeah, what I wasn't working. What it wasn't working for me. And I was not running away from my country. I just knew that I needed to find something better. I wanted to improve my life. I wanted more freedom as a woman, and I did not feel that freedom in Lanka. And America has given me that right. And I embraced it fully. That's why I'm like, there's a part of me where the, like, colonization, white supremacy, like, let's
Yes.
not all be English speakers. Like, there's a part of me that battles that.
Yeah.
But I'm also really open to the idea of whatever we're becoming, which is like an amalgamation, like a mixture of everything, right? And I love that more. And with that, I was even thinking, for Thanksgiving, there is like the traditional Thanksgiving that you have, where you have like the traditional turkey and the stuffings that you were talking about, right? But then we have been thinking about a Friendsgiving, and none of us want to eat the turkey. All of us want to have a different mix of other cuisines. And we're all thinking about doing a potluck style where we're bringing different cuisines. That way we just come together, share food. Again, the whole purpose of having gratitude and giving thanks and coming together is, and some in the United States might actually be offended that we're not celebrating Thanksgiving the way Thanksgiving should be celebrated. However, this is what we're advocating for. We're not trying to hold cultural insulated baggage. We are opening ourselves out to new possibilities, and we're taking responsibility of what it means to be a guest, what it means to be a host, how to open yourself up to others, how to bring that all together into one pot and still have a unique flavor about it, like our spice mixes.
Exactly. And I completely believe in all what you just said. Like, it makes me think that, yes, I wish a lot of people kind of thought on the same grounds. Yeah, a lot of our egos come into play when we are dealing with a lot of these things. I really hope that people kind of take some time, reflect on smaller things that you do, right? Because the
Mm.
smaller changes is going to affect your bigger space. Again, today I'm saying all of these things, but I was not this person a few years back. Why do you think like I feel this way, right? Like it is due to some of the things that I felt, I heard, I saw. And when I come into all of these things, like when it was bothering me, then that becomes a problem. When it doesn't bother me, that's not a problem, which is very true to everybody. But
True. Yeah.
because it's not a problem for me, I shouldn't assume that it's not a problem for someone else. And
Mm.
that's the only
Point.
reason um I make it like a thing. Like we have the space of like including everyone to be a part of your space, right? Like if you are having a personal conversation as well, just if somebody has to overhear it also, they shouldn't feel as if they're being, a lot of things go out of context now.
Yeah.
So that's where, when you're in a public setting, it's only fair to do so. And having said that, I come from a country where multiple languages are spoken, right? Like I have, as you said, you and your friend would kind of speak in Sinhalese and like kind of navigate the conversation. Me and my really good friend, you have met her. So her and I would speak to her in Marathi and she would speak to me in Gujarati. Two different languages, but we understood each other's language, but we couldn't communicate in the same way. So sometimes when we wanted to kind of deliver some information which a lot of people shouldn't know, we have done that as well. So again, I'm not saying that I haven't done all of these things. I have, but where
Yeah.
do we stand today? Where were we in that setting? Was it like affecting a lot of people, or was it like a desk conversation where you're sitting next to your friend and doing that? That's fine. But like if you're in a supermarket, like I keep giving supermarkets because we end up going there at least once every week, and that's where like a lot of these issues start, right? Like you kind of look at somebody and then you're kind of trying to talk in different language, they're going to obviously feel attacked. Like I look
Yeah.
at you like that, and but I'm having a conversation with somebody else. A lot of us do that. Let's be honest. Like these are the small things. I want like a lot of us who's listening reflect. Apart from reflecting, do let us know if the way we are looking at things is right or wrong. Like if there's any better way to kind of tell us how we can grow. Like I'm ready to do that. So understand, give us a perspective. Tell us that,
Yeah.
hey, Charlie, this is what you're thinking is wrong. Tomorrow, what are you going to learn from out of this? We would love to know, hear, understand everybody's perspective, because it's the world is meant for all of us. It's not meant for me, or it's not just meant for you. So if it is meant
Mm.
for all of us, how are we going to make that space for all of us, right? That's what I
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful thoughts. And as two people from different parts of the world, like I mean neighboring countries, but like there's always that gratitude that I have for the relationship that you and I have built now, and we're podcast hosts, we're really talking about our experiences. And there was a time as a Sri Lankan where there was this like direct opposition thought about anybody from India. Like you're like, no, India is not our friends, right? Like, no, we're I know it's not the same thing as like what India and Pakistan might feel, for instance, like that's a whole different topic, right? But like Sri Lankans have that like no to Indians and whatever. And I talked to my brother about this because he still lives in Sri Lanka, and my brother is always surprised at how frequently your name comes up and how much you've been helping me in my business, and how you and I are contributing to each other's lives. We're pouring into each other in a way that I don't think our culture would have expected us to. I don't think our countrymen would really expect us to be this way towards each other. I'm not saying everybody would be like that, but there's a part of me that recognizes like we're making it work,
Yeah.
right? Against every opinion that I was raised to believe, you and I are defying the odds of friendship in many ways, right? From being from two different parts of the world. And with language, I wanted to add a neuroscience fun fact. When you learn another language from a younger age,
Yeah.
you create neural pathways in your brain to understand things better.
Mm-hmm.
So children who have learned more than one language have the ability to kind of comprehend a lot of data and to basically to be able to comprehend it, understand it, to decipher what it is, and to produce a result. And when you were talking about how you and your friend, like you speak in Marathi, she responds in Gujarat, like it will not make sense to many people, right? It's like really confusing. Like how? That means you have to think in a different language to respond.
Yeah.
And now I think in English to respond in English, but there was a time when I had to think in Sinhalese and then think, how do I translate this to English? Because I can't actually say the exact same thing. So like, there is a challenge here. We're not making it sound like it's so simple for you to just abandon your language. We're not saying abandon your language, abandon everything you know. We're just saying that you learning something like this might actually benefit you. It might benefit your children, the younger generations.
Yes.
Introduce these things to them so that their brains evolve differently. There's clear differences in the brain capacity of children who have learned more than one language versus a child who speaks only one language. Again, not to say that it's the rule, but it's just something to consider in this conversation of culture. Ooh. And with that, I wanted to add a little teaser trailer, if you will. I wanted us to give all of our listeners an opportunity to stay tuned for our next episode, because as it turns out, culture is definitely not a one and done topic. And I've also dropped a hint about the person that we're inviting, because I mentioned his father during our podcast today because I'm reading his book. But we are inviting a special guest who is going to share a perspective that's outside of our own, because we're two brown girls. We're really talking about our experiences, and we want to bring in somebody from the United States who has now moved to another country and has had to assimilate and become more he has had to learn how to blend with a new culture. So we will be having that guest in our next episode, in part 2 for culture. And so if you've made it this far, thank you for hanging out with us. We hope it made you feel a little bit more seen. Maybe it made you feel angry or upset, or maybe some emotions stirred up for you. And if so, we want to hear about it. We want you to tell us about it. This is If I'm Being Honest. We're not promising perfection. We are showing up as we are.
Until next time, stay real, stay honest.
Bye-bye.